Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good middle of the night, good whatever it is, wherever you are. I am so excited to chat with Seth and all of you for a little while today because executive function is really at the core, honestly, of pretty much everything parenting related. Because if we are struggling with executive function skills, it's going to show up in our parenting and our abilities to connect with our kids. If our kids are struggling with executive function skills, it's going to show up in their behavior as well. And oftentimes, if we get to the root of what executive function challenge either one of us is having, we can solve a whole lot of problems and really reconnect emotionally from a place of optimal brain engagement as opposed to some sort of lagging skill, as Dr. Ross Green often calls it. So I'm bringing in another guy who I really like, who Seth has interviewed in past seasons, but just always love connecting with you, Seth.
I want to ask, and I'm still, so for everybody watching, thank you for being here. Just trying to get the video going correctly in the background here because it's just kind of confusing for my little brain. But I want to ask, I'm curious how you, because a lot of people, as you know, are brand new to the idea of executive function. This is a really new concept for parents. They haven't heard of it. My executive function is being distracted by my phone doing stuff, so I'm going to turn that off. And that is part of executive function, is to inhibit distractions and inhibition in general. And so there, that is now gone, and I can focus better. But so many people are so new to it, and I hadn't heard of it until probably around 2008 or 9, and then I started going, whoa. I had already been a teacher for about 10 years by that point, and I started going, why don't I know about this? Because that lens is so helpful. So how did you first hear and learn about executive function, and then what got you to like really dive into learning about it and go down the rabbit hole to really kind of take it seriously?
Yeah, I started learning about it when I was studying child development because it is such a fundamental puzzle piece in understanding our children's behavior. But honestly, it was one of your summits, probably 5 or 6 years ago, something like that, where I really decided to start doing a deep dive into it because I realized that I understood, the iceberg above the water level of comprehension, but there was so much more beneath the surface, and I was and still am fascinated by the brain and how it works and how we can really optimize the brain's ability. And so much of that simply comes down to understanding executive function. So, thanks to you, Seth, I really started diving in deeper to understand the brain better.
And then when you look at things through that lens, how has it changed? Because I think this is valuable for parents as well. How has it changed that lens, the way that you approach serving kids?
I really come back to the now infamous quote, I think also by Ross Green. I should invite Ross onto this call with us because I keep quoting him already this morning. But the whole all behavior is communication thing. If I look at my kid who maybe didn't plan ahead for that homework assignment that is now due at 7 o'clock tomorrow morning and it's 10 o'clock at night, there's something more to understand besides just, well, my kid's just lazy or my kid's just distracted or whatever. Whatever the example may be, there are obviously 1,000 different ways that this can manifest. If I can get to the root of what was going on in my child's brain that made this hard for them, because I guarantee in the example I just used, if you ask any kid on the planet, do you want to be late with your assignments? Do you want your parent hovering over you, giving you a hard time? Do you want to feel crummy in class the next morning when you realize you haven't done what you were supposed to do? Every kid is going to give you a resounding no way, I don't want any of that. So there's some sort of gap that we as parents and educators and caregivers need to help our children fill so that they don't have to feel that stress and we don't need to exacerbate that stress by responding as if their behavior were always intentional in that
Or
way.
willful, or yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. The
exactly.
can't and the won't. The can't and the won't. The can't and the won't. Is
Yes.
it a can't or is it a won't? And some parents, in certain situations, still just they'll go to. Oh, well, this time it's a won't. They're being willful, but you have to look at it. It's all context dependent, and you have to look at it in the context of what's going on right now. They may have just had a social blow up earlier that morning with their friend circle or something that they can't even think to articulate in the moment when you're asking them about X, Y, and Z. Or so I I like the all behavior is communication, and that is it's such a more compassionate way to look at things, and it really makes us ask different questions. What is it communicating? And when you said that, and you said, "What is their brain communicating?" My mind went to what is their nervous system communicating? And I know that when you spoke about that last time on Tifos, I love the way you communicate about the nervous system. You're really sharp, um, and I like the way you speak about that stuff. So let's get kind of deep on this today. When we're talking about the nervous system, so I want to talk about something I haven't talked about at all this year on Tifos with anybody. If I have, I've just barely scratched the surface on it, but I want to go a little deep with this right now. But that is when we are speaking, when we are communicating, when we're walking through the grocery store and we walk by someone in the grocery store, we're communicating nervous system to nervous system. You and I right now are communicating nervous system to nervous system. I was distracted. I was doing the video. And meanwhile, if there's a bunch of people on the live, I can see if you want to pop in the chat, some of the chat will get to us. So I'll try to monitor that if you have questions for Sarah or I. But we're speaking nervous system to nervous system even digitally. Like you can tell I'm distracted getting this new program. It's called Riverside, like to stream to places, and you're nodding like you know I'm reading your nervous system, but it's not just the nodding. It's also very subtle things. So what I want to ask about is that to me, it's super game changing to be able to really notice subtle cues. Again, when we walk by someone in the grocery store, our nervous system is talking to that person's nervous system, and we're saying one main question, at least how I describe it, and that is, am I safe? Is that person safe? Right? Am I being threatened by that person? And normally we go through our day and everything's, and we're just like, we don't really think about it, but when we are talking with a friend or a spouse or a child or a teacher or whatever, and our nervous systems are talking, what are some of the subtle things that if parents start noticing them, they can really see their community, as you said, that all behavior is communication. They can see the communication a lot better. So, can you speak to things how somebody's shoulders might be, or their breathing, or like those some of those subtle things that you notice when you're working with somebody that we can kind of take those ideas and really because we're so unaware of them. So that was a big setup for this question, but
I love it though. And Seth, your nervous system is probably picking up that my nervous system is excited to talk about this because this is so fundamental in understanding our kids better and supporting them in these ways. So good news and the bad news, there's no one size fits all because for some kids it would be when they're making eye contact with you, they feel super safe. Well, for other kids, eye contact is virtually always unsafe. So I don't want to simply say, this is a green light, this is a red light, but I'm going to say starting with things like whatever your child's, we call it the ventral vagal in nervous system and polyvagal terms, whenever they're in their ventral vagal state, and there's no quiz, you don't have to remember what it's called, but whatever they do visually to communicate safety to you. So for example, for some kids, it is going to be eye contact. They're going to be engaged in what you're saying. They're going to have a general look of calm on their face versus, we all know that really tight jaw feeling that we carry sometimes. Every human does that. So first thing we can do is literally just kind of read their face. And I'm going to kind of go down the body.
please,
And for
I
those
love
of you,
this.
yeah, for those of you who are watching at home, and Seth, you too, feel free to play along at home here. You are probably noticing right now, at least I am, that when I was talking about the face, you might have noticed something about your face. Maybe you're noticing that you're kind of squinting. I'm going to work to intentionally increase or at least imagine increasing the space between my eyebrows. I am going to imagine unclenching my jaw. And look what I am doing now. I'm down to my neck and my shoulders. Well, anybody out there, a shoulder stress person? Hello, you are my people.
I am.
Go
Yeah.
ahead and just lower those shoulders and be very intentional. Bring your shoulder blades back as if they wanted to touch each other. Because when we feel safe, we literally open up our bodies a little bit more. Because what do we do when we're in fight or flight? We either get ready for fighting stance, which is a very compact stance, a stance of muscle and aggression, if you will. When we feel safe, we open ourselves up to be vulnerable. When I do that, I can feel kind of my whole heart space kind of opening, and my chest is just ready to breathe in more oxygen. Notice your kids breathing. When they, or we for that matter, are in fight or flight or a lack of emotional safety, we breathe in a very shallow way. It feels like it's only about here to here. Whereas when we feel safer, and actually here's the why. People always want to know the why. If I'm getting ready to fight, or if I'm getting ready to run away really fast, I have to breathe shallowly because I need to conserve my energy. Whereas when I have safety in my body, I want to be taking more oxygen elsewhere. I need to be able to breathe in a calmer manner where I can really relax my diaphragm. I can really get my whole body into this position of, I'm not being attacked right now. I can have my arms down at my sides. I can open up this whole midsection. Now, let me continue to move on through the body. Let's talk about, Seth, we're good enough friends here that we can be a little bit awkward. Let's talk about bottoms and backsides for a second. When we are feeling tense, what do? We tighten up everything, including our sitting muscles back there. Just go ahead and relax everything in that whole pelvic backside region because that also signifies safety. Now, what are you looking at your kids? No, you're not going to say, hey, stand up and turn around. I need to see your backside. That's super awkward. But just look at their physical stance. How are they standing? Are they sitting? What is their body communicating about? Do they look like they are ready to pounce or to exit the room quickly if they need to? Or is their physical stance one of safety and relaxation? Are their feet planted, ready to go? Or are they in whatever relaxed position that is? So you can literally do a whole body scan, everything from looking at your kids' foreheads, checking their breathing, looking at how they're holding themselves, and that can give you a pretty good indication about whether their body is in a sense of safety or in a sense of, I might need to get out of here or defend myself at any moment.
And when you talked about chest breathing, can you talk about what it looks like with not chest breathing?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we are in a more relaxed state, we will notice, first of all, a little bit more movement, a little bit more fluidity in the body. Because when we are doing that really shallow chest breathing, we're pretty stiff because the oxygen isn't flowing very well. Whereas when we are more relaxed, you will notice more subtle movement. Just as if the body is flowing like a river, we can just see that sense of calm. I'm sure everybody who's playing along at home just feels more fluidity in their body as they are engaging in the breath to get it all the extra places it needs to go besides just ready for battle.
Yeah, and I was also thinking about the belly breathing.
Oh,
And
yeah.
one of the I listen to, like, if I'm listening to an interview on YouTube in particular, I listen to things fast all the time. But you can really see on an interview if somebody's nervous and it's sped up on YouTube, you can really see this.
Yep.
Or you see nothing because they're belly breathing, right? And
Right.
that's that, okay, I'm calm and relaxed and I'm not in that fight, flight, or freeze state. But this chest breathing, and it's more subtle obviously in real time, but you can see your child's shoulders going up and down. So you can notice if the belly is relaxed and their shoulders are not going up and down because can you speak to that? Do you
Yeah.
notice?
Absolutely. So when we feel safer, you're exactly right. We do tend to breathe in our bellies and get that oxygen through more of the body. Now, there is one thing that I want to caution
And
people against. If
belly
you
breathing does not mean into your stomach for everybody out
Yes,
there.
yes, exactly, right. Just down into that general area, just more movement, more fluidity. Now, for people who are in a chronic state of stress, someone who has lived with significant trauma, it'll be hard to just look at them and say, do they feel safe? Because their body may
Good
have
point.
learned through muscle memory, I need to always be on guard. So perhaps some of you who are listening right now are in this situation where you've had so much chronic stress for so long that your body just feels like it's always ready to go, ready to handle whatever comes up. Well, you're spending more time than is optimal, just like your kids would be, in that sympathetic state of the nervous system, in that fight or flight mode. But here's the good news. There are still some things you can notice in your kids and things you can help your kids master to increase the safety in their bodies. Now, quick little science tidbit. When we are chronically stressed, our amygdala, which is a part of our brain, actually grows. It gets bigger. Well, what does it do? It releases cortisol. The more cortisol, stress hormone, we have through our body, the bigger the amygdala grows. So it becomes this vicious cycle, which exacerbates that chronic fight or flight stress.
When you say grows, you don't mean like inflammation in the moment. You mean that the neurons, the amygdala is very small.
Yeah,
It's
it's like
from the
walnut.
word almond, from the
Yeah,
Latin. And it looks like an almond when they started opening brains up hundreds of years ago and called it
yes.
the amygdala. But that there are so many more neurons because the use it or lose it. It's working so much harder that the actual size of it grows, or that in the moment, or
Some of both. That's a really good question. If stress has been chronic over years, the actual amygdala can grow. It
I
can be
never heard that. That's cool. Okay.
Yeah, it can physically be bigger than it used to be. Good news is it can shrink back down again, but it's not something like, oh, well, I took my supplements and decided to shrink my amygdala today. This is something that comes back through days, months, weeks, years of safety. And then the amygdala says, oh, I don't constantly need to be on guard anymore. So you can actually repair your brain in that way. The same is true for your children. So what we can do if we or our children have been living in a chronic state of lack of safety, just practice any one of these things. You might only do it once a day, but you might do maybe at bedtime. By the way, great way to enhance sleep. Do a body scan with your kids. Just help them relax their foreheads and their jaw and their shoulders. Belly breathing can actually trigger trauma responses in someone with a chronic history of trauma. So belly breathing is not a one size fits all. So be careful of that too. But if you simply go through muscle relaxation, that can be a great way to start facilitating that overall healing in the body so that you can start being able to see more of those natural signals of the safety that you asked me about, Seth.
Yeah, and when I first started learning about the nervous system, I was living where you live. I was living in Colorado, and I had been in a coma in 2000, and then I got a therapist in Boulder who did not prescribe medication. So, in what she did, she did EMDR, brain spotting, and Vipassana with me. And it seems so for anybody who's watching that, just it's like the amygdala is growing and and relaxing your face and stuff like this. Like I thought like I didn't see immediate results from it. I didn't understand, but I had at the time, I would wake up in anxiety and panic daily. I had panic attacks all the time. I didn't know where they were at the beginning, and then I started knowing. I went to the hospital 3 or 4 times having panic attacks, thinking I was dying, not knowing what a panic attack was.
Yeah.
Nobody had ever said anything about it in the hospitals when I went, and I finally figured it out. And but it took about 3 years, and I don't really, I have anxiety 2 or 3 times a year for like a minute now, going from daily for 3 years. And what you said is like, and I didn't know how to articulate it, but I believed at the time that my brain was changing. Something was changing. It
Yeah.
was slow, it took time, but it changed. Like my nervous system was not the same. I didn't feel hope. So for parents who have a lot of anxiety, or if you're watching your kid and it just seems like they're just looping in anxiety every day, like I didn't have hope that it could ever change. And I'm not saying that the way that it changed for me would be the same for everybody, but I will say that it can change and get a lot better. But like you said, this is the amygdala that there too. That this is a small part of your brain here that's filled with all these neurons that are designed to help us survive. And if we feel like we're in a safe world, even if that sense of unsafety isn't a big T trauma and it's a little T trauma where it's like, oh my gosh, I'm going to fail all my classes. I'm going to fail all my tests. I'm such a bad student. I can't do anything right. And it's this sort of chronic sense that we're not safe. Even that those sorts of things can make the nervous system feel unsafe. Well, that can change.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing your story, Seth. I actually have a story that's not that different from yours, so I want to echo it. I didn't have the coma piece, but I had other pieces that are very much in line with yours. So I also want to echo, yes, the brain can change and it can heal, and this is accessible. And you're right, there's no single path that is going to be the holy grail for everybody out there, but there are absolutely things that can create more of that safety in the body. I will also reflect back to you right now, Seth. As you were talking, I was noticing in your body,
Thank
your
you for doing
jaw.
this right now.
Yes, absolutely. I was noticing your face looking more relaxed. I was noticing that little bit, very small, little bit of movement in your shoulders. You are living exactly what I was talking about as your body was coming out of how do I make the systems work? And we're now having a conversation that seems to be creating some of the safety in your body. I was doing everything I could to channel my inner Stephen Porges to say, how can I be a super co-regulator with you and, help just be a voice of calm in this conversation. I don't know how your body is physically feeling, but I'm noticing a calmer demeanor in you right now.
Definitely calmer than at the beginning today, but that has a lot to do with the tech stuff that I'm managing. But yeah, and I had Stephen Porges on a couple years ago. I don't know if you know that. It
I
was,
didn't know that. No, he's a great guy. I love him.
yeah, and thanks for saying co-regulating too, because I think that that's valuable to talk about too. We can talk about, so for everybody watching, this thing called co-regulation. These mirror neurons, our body, our nervous system is always talking together. I don't know if you would look at it the same way, and I think you're more versed in this than I am, but I say like the stronger nervous system wins, meaning that if somebody comes into the room like, oh my gosh, it's the end of the world, blah, 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 that, and people respond to that person and go, oh, really? Okay. And then the stronger nervous system wins. And if somebody's there and they're like, we are safe, we are okay. Like that nervous system is telling the other nervous system you're safe, or the other one's telling you you're not safe. And so much of this is story. So sorry if this sounds abstract, everybody, but we have a story, a narrative, these thoughts in our mind about a situation. And an example is you might be walking down the street and you see a snake next to your foot, and you were like, "Oh my gosh, there's a snake! That's dangerous." And then you notice it's a stick. Your story immediately changes. Oh, it's a stick, and you literally start to re-regulate your nervous system in that moment when the story changes. Well, here we have stories though in life that have to do with social situations, with school or grades, or with self worth, or with so many things. And is it in the right proportion to what the story's about, or is it out of proportion? And when it's out of proportion, and we can have a healthy way of communicating with our nervous system to our kids to help regulate, that is such a powerful tool. I don't know if that was a good explanation, but that's why I'm asking you to help clarify that.
Yeah, I love that. So, you know, for better or worse, whatever we believe to be true, even if it's false, is our reality. So if I
Our
say,
perception.
yeah, our perception, exactly, our perception is our reality. So if a child is walking around feeling chronically unsafe, they are believing nothing in the world is safe, I can never fully relax, whatever it may be. So here is where we as parents and caregivers can help co-regulate with them. And I actually really like the way that you described it, Seth, about the stronger nervous system or the stronger emotional reaction tends to win in that moment. Now, that being said, when our prefrontal cortex is online, when we're able to see things clearly, when we're able to understand and ask the question, is it true? You know, like
Or how
let's take,
true is it?
yeah, or how true is it? Let's say, using your example, I'm walking down the street with my kid and we see this snake, and my kid flips out and is absolutely sure that it's a snake. If she turns around, buries her face in my shoulder, and next thing you know, I'm carrying my child home, doesn't really matter how many times I say, actually, it was a stick. There's nothing to worry about, because if my child is still stuck on her mental image of this slithering, scary thing, it's going to take her a whole lot longer to come back to a neutral or safe emotional space. I'm going to have to do extra convincing, if you will. But here's the thing, I can't logic my way into co-regulation. A mistake that many of us make as parents is to try
Yes.
to talk our kids out of what they're feeling. There's nothing to be scared of. Don't worry, it was just a stick. Why are you so worried? You're overreacting. Well, if the child feels like, number one, I'm sure it was a snake. Number two, you're telling me I'm wrong for being scared. I don't feel safe with you now either. So it's going to take longer for me to find that emotional baseline again. So instead, we actually want to meet our child exactly where they are, because their perception is their reality. So in that example, I might say, I understand how scared you felt. I felt scared too. It's scary to think that we're about to step on a snake. I want you to know that it was a stick, but until you feel calm again, I want you to know that your fear makes perfect sense. I'm here for you. I love you. I get it. I'm going to support you until you feel safe again. And it makes sense to be scared until your body tells you that it doesn't need to feel that way anymore. And just by doing that, my child can say, oh, she gets it. She's not trying to talk me out of my reality. And only when that child feels that emotional connection, that emotional safety, that emotional validation, then can she hear the logic part of, oh, it was actually a stick. But I can't start with just the stick and expect my child to suddenly be like, oh, okay, never mind, it's fine.
And we do that so often. Well intentioned, but it's all right. I have Sarah Kesty in the waiting room, and I have a question from LM. So I'll ask the question. I'm going to see what happens if I let Sarah Kesty in the room. Sarah Moore, do you know Sarah Kesty?
I don't, but I'm glad to meet her.
Oh, Sarah Kesty
Hi.
is my bud. This is Sarah Moore.
Hi.
Hello,
And Seth, I
Sarah.
don't know how you got so many Sarahs this year. It's like every day there's a Sarah or two.
Yeah, well, here's two Sarahs today, two incredible human beings serving families and kids. And so, hi, Sarah Kesty. So, Sarah Moore, you can hang out or not. It looks like it's working correctly. So maybe I'll ask the question for Sarah, and then if you want to hang out or not, but we'll dive for Sarah Moore. I'll ask the question that's in the chat from somebody, and then we'll say what's up to Sarah Kesty. Sound good?
Yep.
All right. Question from LM. I have a now 13-year-old boy. He knows intellectually that strategies, and this sounds like what we just talked about, but he knows intellectually the strategies and what to look for in his body, but still says those big emotions come quicker than he can stop. Any other suggestions? He does return to calm faster and will walk away, but he says he feels he doesn't see or feel it coming, though adults around him do. That's a great one.
Yeah, that's a great one.
First of
So
all, I
for
think the fact that he's saying that adults around him do is really a compliment to you and the adults in his life, being able to notice these things. So you, whether or not you're articulating it, you are noticing a change in his nervous system, and the more you can identify those things verbally and more specifically, that might be helpful. But Sarah, go ahead, please. Sarah
Yeah,
Moore.
yeah. All the Sarahs can now speak. Yeah, so first of all, I want to echo what Seth said. It sounds like you're really attuned to your 13-year-old, because if you weren't attuned, you wouldn't notice and it would just be more chaos. And instead, by your attunement, you're helping give him a roadmap of how to handle this stuff when it comes up. Secondly, I want to remind you, you probably know this already, but his prefrontal cortex is still developing. That's the front part of the brain that is right behind my hand here. And it is not going to be done developing until he's between 25 and 30 years old. I am guessing because you have a 13-year-old that you're more than 25 to 30, and you have the ability to do things like look at the bigger picture, think about the consequences of not only your actions, but also his actions. You're able to see more of what's going on for him, whereas he is still in his body with this still under construction brain that by design has kept him alive all these years. He is supposed to be more reactive as a little kid. Over time, by 13, he is less reactive and more responsive because this part of the brain is growing and developing at a very rapid rate. That being said, it's not done yet. So simply knowing that what he's doing and his trouble with managing his reactions may be entirely developmentally normal. And really the best thing you can do is continue to give him grace, continue to give him opportunities to practice these skills, help him perhaps notice behaviors in others, because sometimes it's a lot easier for kids his age to point out, hey, I noticed Seth in my class or Sarah in my class doing this thing. Here's what I think they should do next. Sometimes it's a lot easier to learn outside the body than to implement it inside the body. So that might be one really tangible thing you can start doing with him now, even in TV shows or movies or whatever. Pause it, have a quick discussion. That's a great way to learn. I talk about it in my concept of story teaching, but that is really one of the best ways to sort of lay the groundwork for those neural connections that you want him to be able to make as his brain continues to develop in that way. How's that land?
Excellent. That's so good. Yeah. And I love the watching other people in person or even on movies and stuff. Yep. And like I said about the YouTube videos speeding up, like there's so many ways that we can look. The Olympics are going on right now, like looking at how people are responding in the audience of the Olympics or the athletes themselves. Like there's so much strong emotion that they're showing. And when it says he knows what to look for in his body, but say that the big emotions come quicker than he can stop, I guess the word stop makes me pause to say, that I'd want to have a conversation with this kid about that. It's not about stopping. It's not about like noticing emotions coming in, like stopping. It's about we learn to work with emotions in the world by processing emotions, by feeling the whole gamut of human emotions. These are very important parts of him. They have important messages. Are they right sized, as we talked about earlier? That's what he, as a young person, is learning how to figure out. That's called wisdom, like when we're learning those things. And that takes a long time, but he's exactly where he's supposed to be. But I don't want him to think that he's supposed to stop those emotions. But it's like, okay, they're coming. I know I have a toolbox. This may not be fun for a moment, but I can handle this. That's where I want to get that kiddo.
Yeah. And I'll be brief here because I know it's Sarah's turn, but yes, emotions are information. That's all they are. They're just information. So helping him embrace those can be really powerful. And thank you, Seth. Sarah, great to meet you. And I'm sure we'll chat again soon. All right, keep in touch.
And you have to meet Julia Caldwell in Boulder.
Oh, I'd love to. Okay,
You
yeah.
have to, yeah.
I'll look her up. All right, take care. Talk to you soon.
Take care. Hi, Sarah Kesty.
Hey.
So as we're transitioning, so yeah, Julia Caldwell was on the summit one year, and she's a big name in the polyvagal world, and not as well known as Deb Dana or Stephen Porges, but she's really incredible. Sarah Kesty, what is up, bud?
Hi. How the heck are ya?
I'm good. I'm good. I am in a little bit of fight, flight, or freeze. Like every year after the summit, I get into a depression for like a week. And I think because in the months up to it, it's just like it's a pressure cooker of tasks and stuff. But I'm really
Hmm.
doing good. And for me, sleep is so important. I don't sleep well, and I slept well the last 2 nights. So I'm good.
Great.
How are you, Sarah Kesty? And hello, world. Hello, parents. I didn't even mention we're at executivefunctionsummit.com. My name is Seth Perler. We have the summits going on now this whole weekend until Monday at midnight. Executivefunctionsummit.com. If you like what we're doing, please share that link. That is how people find out about us. Please help us get the word out. And so I didn't even mention that.
That's all right. We go straight into friend mode and we're like, hey, how can we collaborate? How can we help people together? Yeah.
Yeah, we start, yeah, and diving into the fun topics.
That's
So,
what
how
we
are you?
do. Yeah. I'm good. Sorry, I made a face because I have wearing a cast right now because I broke my tibia and I kicked the table. So sorry for the small earthquake, everyone, but we're
No
here.
worries. No worries.
Seth, you were mentioning like after TIFOS, that kind of like dip in demand kind of like coordinates with like a dip in mood. I've talked to so many people, especially like my graduating seniors that are now kind of in this like, where do I put myself until I go to college or gap year or whatever kind of space where it feels like really disorienting. So what you're sharing makes a lot of sense, and I think we see that in our kids like with the transition to summer, even though we think it should feel amazing, right? Like,
Because they're
oh,
free and
summer, you're free, but I think we take for granted the like construct of school and the bells and the expectations that kind of, even though we resent it and push against it, is also paradoxically very helpful, and we miss it when it's gone. That's
it's
just,
a
yeah.
routine, and the nervous system is adapted to this routine for 180 days, 10 months of a school
Hmm.
year, 2 semesters, 36 weeks total, 18 weeks per semester. We've adapted for this 180 days, and then that changes for summer break, and there's an unwinding, and the nervous system is going, whoa, okay, I'm not getting all these same routines and stuff. What's going on here? So, if your child's mood is seems exacerbated or unpredictable, that could have something to do with it.
Totally. Yeah. And now we're seeing kind of the opposite, right? Where we're like ramping back into school, and there might be some resistance there too, because transitions are hard. And we know, like, especially if you have executive dysfunction, school is hard. Yeah. But not as hard with all these strategies, which is like, gosh, this year, Seth, oh my gosh. I'm looking at everybody and I'm like, I'm part of this. Like, this is amazing. Like, it just, I'm learning so much.
Good, good, cool. It's a lot of polishing everybody to get like the back end of the whole summit to, and every year we've made it better and better. But this year I'm like, this is super solid, but it's a lot of moving pieces. So
Yeah.
I'm
There's
glad that you're diving into them. I feel like it's really easy to dive in this year.
Yeah, it's like there's a synergy. And to make the invisible visible for everybody, as Seth's friend, I heard him say, I anticipate a low mood next week. So I wrote myself a note, like, check on Seth with the specific date, because I value checking on you and I want to make sure that
Thank you.
my busy schedule or my short-term memory doesn't impact showing up for you. So just to
Mm,
make the invisible visible, but also to ruin a surprise, I'll check on you next week.
thank you. Just saying that means a lot.
Yeah, heck yeah.
So we have, so for those of you on, I can see some of the comments. We're streaming to a bunch of different places. And if you write a comment and you have a question, I will tell Sarah what that is and we'll address it. I just don't know if I can see it everywhere, but I will do my best to do that. So Sarah, as and then I think Gretchen Wegner, I don't know, have you met Gretchen before?
No, I
So
follow her
she'll,
though. So
she'll be, okay, she'll be here in 20 minutes. She'll join us as well. And then, so as I'm going to look in the Facebook group, see if there are any questions for you. But Sarah, you were talking about college students this year in the pattern. What other patterns are you seeing right now with families or students?
ooh, good question. Um, I see a lot of the like yo-yo and like you were talking with Sarah M and not Sarah K about where it's remember in school, like you get your last initial because there's so many of you.
Hmm.
Probably not you, Seth, but
No, there were three Brians. That's why I call myself Seth, because my first name is actually Brian.
I did know
I
that.
changed my name when I was like 17, and I moved from Ohio to Indiana, and I thought, oh, I'm gonna change it from Brian to Seth because I grew up with three Brians, and I wanted to feel more unique, and I thought that it would help my mental health. Like, and it didn't. Changing your name does not change your mental health at all. So I still was
What?
struggling as a teenager.
Being a teenager is hard. Yes, I get it. Yeah, and that like kind of segues back to the component of like what other patterns am I seeing? Um, so the other Sarah was talking about like, hey, parents, because we're older than 30, our prefrontal cortex is pretty well developed. Obviously, we're all still building our executive function, but we can kind of use our predictive skills to say, oh my gosh, if my kid doesn't have this system on board, the year's going to be really hard. And so right now I'm fielding a lot of like, my kid can't do this, or I'm not and it's very valid and very real. And I think what I can offer parents who are listening, who are saying like, my kid's so disorganized, like they did not figure out their system over the summer, or my kid doesn't have like one place to write down all their stuff, and so they're going to lose their to-do list. It's like, yes, and like, yes, we can hold space for like, woo, okay, that's on our radar, and that's something that we're going to want to coach and we're going to want to support and we're going to want to provide the toolbox for. But at the very same time, lasting change, unfortunately, takes a lot of iterations. And some of those systems are based on kind of testing out the school year for a couple of weeks and seeing, okay, what are the patterns of demands for what like kind of organization systems would match up with that, what do my teachers seem to value, and then how can I kind of match how I show up for that. So if you are a parent who is able to like jump into the future and you're noticing like, oh, my kid doesn't have this particular skill set on board yet, and that's concerning, it definitely is. And there's a whole bunch of hope, because kids, if we want it to be lasting change, they've got to create it, and they've got to kind of take it to their life laboratory and go test it out, and then come back and reflect, okay, did this work? What did I learn about myself as a learner? And what did I learn about my brain? And then how can I continue kind of using that self awareness to then like improve my cycle of using strategies and figuring it out.
Yeah, and parents, you know your kid best. You really do, even if you feel like that you don't get that messaging from some teachers or from some people in your life. You know your kids best, and you know the patterns. And that's a very good thing, that you can predict the patterns. Obviously, the way you articulate that to your kid, you want to be aware of, is it landing or not? Is there buying and ownership in the conversation? So, but you do know the patterns. The good news about that, and especially because I have so many parents who have executive function challenges themselves, and they say, well, how am I supposed to help my kid if I have executive function challenges? That's good, because you've actually developed so many strategies over the years so that you can manage your life. You just may not have been aware of it, but you have done that work. So you actually know how to do it, but sometimes parents becoming aware of that is so helpful. But if you know your kid's pattern, it's to me, it's not just a let's hope things get better. It's like, okay, you know the patterns, sit down and take this seriously as a study. Sit at the kitchen table by yourself, jot down the patterns that you see, and pick a couple that you want to start working on that are realistic, and start strategizing how to make baby steps. Baby steps are what work. It takes time, so it's consistent baby steps that works. So like, but believe in yourself. You do know your kid best. You do know the patterns, but you have to make it concrete. It's not just let's hope. Um, so
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I've gotten that question a lot about like, well, if I have executive function challenges, how the heck am I supposed to help my kid? And it's kind of it's twofold. Yes, it makes it harder because, managing executive function takes executive function.
Hmm.
But also, you know what I mean? Like
Uh-huh. I
it's
love how
such
you talk.
it's a pickle. And because you've been there, you're actually a way stronger self scientist than, say, somebody who just sort of naturally gained their executive function by osmosis. So, like Seth's saying, if one of my favorite questions to ask is like, what went right? Like, I do have this skill. What went right? How did I get there? What have I tried before? What does help me? What are some of the things that maybe I think are just how people roll, like having specific times in the morning for my routine and being really rigid. And maybe they're not just how people roll. Maybe that's something that you've figured out, and that can become a model for your kid. Even though you might get some eye rolls back about it, we're still kind of exposing and building that toolbox.
Yeah, yeah, and the modeling is so important. I love think alouds where you can just not even be talking to your kid, but they're in the room and you're just saying, "Okay, I'm gonna whatever the thing is. I'm gonna take my cup and put it on the coaster so it doesn't ruin this thing that I don't know if that's a silly, but the thinking aloud of that you're using your strategies and um, to be able to talk aloud and say, okay, I'm doing this thing to plan or to organize and but that modeling. Okay, we got two questions. Let me get to these. Writing question. Thank you for the wonderful talk yesterday. Looking for apps like inspiration to support writing and helping organize ideas. Any suggestions? I mean, I like Notion. I
Mm-hmm.
use that usually with high school and up. Sometimes younger kids, maybe middle school, but and then Google Docs and to organize ideas, I do a template, an essay template. So like in my EF lab, I have that template, but like I want kids to have a template that they can duplicate for any paper the whole year because there's basically one basic structure for
Mm-hmm.
most papers. So I do like yeah, it's like Times New Roman, double spaced with the bibliography at the end, intro, body, conclusion, and then it tells what should be in each one. But that's just one way of. So for this person, I would say you could also look up the writing process and
Mm-hmm.
pre-writing. And you could look up a lot around that. But the writing process has 5 steps, and the way I teach it at least, but I think a lot of people teach it with 5 steps. And you can create templates that they can use. What about you, Sarah? And then there's a question after that.
Yeah. Um, and I think if I'm hearing you right, there's like
Sure.
two templates going on. There's the template for writing. So like what could the sentence starters look like? What could like the format look like? Sort of the skeleton, and then you put in the ideas like in
Yeah,
a doc. And then the template for the writing process might be more like a task breakdown. Like here's what you gather, here's how you set the scene, here's how you kind of personalize to them what works for them. Like do they have a writing soundtrack, all that kind of stuff, so that they have the steps and the flow, and then they have the template of words to kind of fill in. Yeah.
kinda. Gosh, I wish I had more time because it's you know
This is always what we
two
do.
decades of working with kids to develop and to talk about in 2 minutes. But what I do is I give them a template that just lives as a template in Google Docs, and that template is a template for papers. It can be used for fiction or nonfiction. It's better for nonfiction. There's a difference with fiction in that you have the plot mountain. I don't know if you
Mm-hmm.
know the plot mountain, but with nonfiction, with reports and essays and stuff like that, really, that once they start learning this thing called hamburger essays or 5 paragraph essays, which usually is in 4th or 5th grade when they're starting to get introduced to this sort of stuff, that basic template goes all through college. So if you're going to write a 10-page paper in college, it's still basically the same thing. Now, it may not be intro, body, conclusion, which is your 5 paragraph essay, but so you may have 7 body sections, or it may be in chapters, or this or that. But having the framework that they can just duplicate that, click make a copy in Google Docs, and then give it the new title with and pop in the teacher's name, the due date, and all the things, then that gives them a structure, and within the structure, like it'll say like what to add in the like in the intro. It'll say, you know, what's your thesis or what's your main idea and blah blah. And then I have ways of saying things like the introduction is I'm going to tell you what I'm about to tell you. You know, that's what an intro is, and a conclusion is I just told here I'm telling you what I just told you. And like but basically I want it to be a template they can duplicate and fill in the blanks and then delete out the notes from the template, and and then they can build from there. Obviously they need instruction to learn how to do that, but and then as far as the writing process, that's not so much a template as it is that is more direct instruction of understanding that there is a 5-step process to the writing process. There's a process to this. Now I do a 5-step process, but that you pre-write, you draft, you revise, edit, publish. That's how the words I use, and then each one of those I talk about what the nuances of those are. But this person's asking like they're looking for apps. Anyhow, first of all, did that answer your question? Second of all, they're asking for looking for apps like inspiration to support writing and helping to organize ideas.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think like our
Organizing ideas.
answers differing just shows that there is no right or wrong way to do it. And whatever lowers the affective filter, because writing feels scary for a lot of people. It's one of the most cognitive demanding things that we can do. Maybe we up level when you have to take notes, because then you're writing and also trying to listen and prioritize and do all the things. But so there, as long as it's something that works for your kid, that's what you go with. And that might take a couple trials of like blending Seth's stuff with my stuff and like, okay, we found the just right mix. Or maybe your kid comes up with something that's like, genius. I had no idea that would help you. Awesome. Let's figure out how to extract it, make it like a template for your life so that we can continue it because you found something that works. So app wise, I'm with you on anything that you can speak out your ideas and have it capture fairly accurately can be a huge help, because sometimes it's the bottleneck of articulating and capturing what we're trying to say by typing or writing that becomes so frustrating, and then we maybe skip parts in the middle because they fell out of our working memory and it just kind of becomes jumbled. So having that available, and that, I think I said this in my talk, but that also could be just us scribing, like the kids dumping ideas and we're just taking it down, and then they can kind of go and work through it. So any apps like that are really helpful. I would say if you go into something that's like a graphic organizer app or something that kind of helps you map, there's a program called Bullet Map that I like too. Any of those, don't fret if they don't instantly work for your kid, or if it's like, this seems like extra work. Sometimes we've got to help them build the bridge between the pre-writing and the actual writing, because sometimes they see them as two separate tasks and they're like, I don't want to do this extra thing, it's not even worth points. And we've got to kind of help them see like, no, actually that just built your essay and now you're just adding on to
And it
it.
saves you time. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because they say in helping to organize ideas, that is pre-writing, and the writing process is organizing
Mm-hmm.
ideas. That is your webbing, your outlining, your making note cards. You can use that for apps for this, drawing pictures. Oh my gosh, kids drawing out ideas, even for nonfiction, they can draw out little ideas in terms of what they're thinking about saying in their essays or papers. But there's so many ways to do pre-writing. So. And that is, yeah, before drafting. And I think, I don't know if this parent's having this challenge, but that the challenge is, and with a lot of kids with executive function challenges and who have these very divergent ways of thinking, and that they write these motto papers that are one giant paragraph that go in a million directions, and it's completely disorganized. And then backtracking out of that to learn how to structure it takes so much time and energy for them, and it's very frustrating. And the pre-writing is, I talk about bucket theory, like whatever pre-writing we're doing, I like to think of it in terms of buckets. And what do you want? we can choose to do the buckets different ways, but those are your paragraphs or sections. And well, let's go on to the next one because we only have a minute here. Wendy asks, how do we best encourage our recent senior graduate on an unstructured gap year to get out of his super tight comfort zone? We know his growth is on the other side of this, but he fights tooth and nail to remain there. Do you want me
Yeah.
to read it again?
No, I can see it. I pulled it up too. So
Oh,
yeah. I figured it out, Seth
fancy.
Perler. Brian Seth Perler.
Shh,
Okay. I,
nobody knows.
I didn't know that was a secret because you kind of just told everyone. So Sarah Kay over here, she ruins everything. Um,
No, I did.
okay, how do we get
I'll
out
take
of our
100%
comfort zone?
responsibility. Go ahead. All right.
Sorry. All right. Yeah, and Gretchen can join us in a sec when she's ready. Um, that that is tricky, right? Because executive function is right there in there when we need to be able to plan and kind of experiment. And sometimes we've been battered by so many kind of trials that haven't gone so hot in the past that we become sort of routinized and more rigid with what works for us, to the point that then we're excluding more things. And it's cognitive flexibility is also an executive function, so
Mhm.
that's something that we can work on. I think in this case, when we're talking about like gap year and what's available, it's almost like, and jump in, Seth, if this makes sense, but it's almost like the menu is so huge for gap year. Like, what could you do with yourself? What does it look like? That it might feel overwhelming. So maybe helping condense into main ideas of like, okay, what kind of intellectual growth might sound good? How are you going to move your body? What's going to challenge you for your independence? And sort of offering, like you were saying, writing buckets, but like what to do with yourself buckets and themes. And then at like that structure may help then kind of navigate all of the potential options that otherwise could be overwhelming.
Yeah, the way that I think about this, and so recent senior graduate, they're on an unstructured gap year. So for those who don't know, that I'm imagining means that he's taking a year, he's done with high school, and he's taking a year to explore. And I am a
Mm-hmm.
big fan of gap years, so I think this is great. And it says to get out of an unstructured gap year to get out of his super tight comfort zone. So it sounds like the pendulum has swung from one place totally to this other place, and that's scary. The nervous
Mm-hmm.
system is going to feel really, really uncomfortable because structure feels safe. Now, there can be too much structure, of course. I don't want to be locked up in a room my whole life. That's too much structure. I don't want to just eat one meal for the rest of my life, you know. But the point is that there is a balance, but we need structure. We love structure. We need predictability that feels safe. We need to know it's that we want the right kinds of structures. So going to this unstructured place is really hard. Now, my question would be first, what is the relationship like between you and your child? Is there buying and ownership? As you all are discussing this stuff, is it landing? If it's not landing, then I really want you to find somebody who's not you in the short term to come in there and be helpful. That could be a coach, a mentor, a family member, um, any number of people who's not you that does have the type of relationship with them where it will land and they can start helping them build the structures out. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and if you do have the type of relationship where it's landing and they're receiving your help and guidance and they want it and you have that kind of conversations, then you're going to do the same thing. You're going to start. There's something called the wheel of life, and it sort of breaks down different areas of life. That there's a million of them out on the internets, but just to help them see that there are these different areas of life and what kinds of structures. I mentioned Notion earlier with the last question, but for a kiddo like this, I want them to have some sort of project management system because after high school life, well, even high school, but life is a series of projects. They have projects. Goals are projects. How do we reach a goal? Executive function. We execute on tasks in an organized way to reach a goal. Now, I and your kiddo, we struggle with executive function. So we really have to build skill sets around accomplishing those goals. But so if you can help them get a project management system going, and emotionally, again, this is a lot. So if there is a counselor, a therapist, or somebody to help them work with emotions, but I want to see this kiddo getting out of the house, going and volunteering, going and getting a job, quitting because they hate it, going and get another job, getting fired, going and getting another job, they love it. Like none of those things are bad. These are great experiences. Like I want them exploring, go volunteer, and they turns out that place they volunteer at is not fun anymore. Go to another place. They find one they love it. They go do some meetups. They go do some programs. They go do some this or that classes, cooking classes, whatever. And they're exploring. This is a time to explore and to get out of the house and as much as possible, hopefully get off of electronics and go explore and try all kinds of things to travel. Travel could be nearby, the next town. Travel could be overseas. Just like to get jobs, go travel, join programs, volunteer, be of service. Like, what kinds of things can this kiddo do to? I'm going to let Gretchen in and
Okay.
go ahead and.
And I think if I'm reading between the lines on this question too, there's a little bit of possibly like anxiety. Hi, Gretchen, or like some resistance. So while we can say like, "Hey, go explore," it might be like, "Oh no, that's not for me." So I would say too, what's been helpful is to find something that's like got a little bit of social and a little bit of external accountability. So people are counting on you. It's at a specific time. You know what's expected. You might be able to preview it a little bit so it's not as anxiety producing, so that we're kind of addressing maybe some of the challenges associated with getting out of our comfort zone, but in a systematized way so that it's also increasing the likelihood that we'll show up. And I know having that predictability in our schedule and something that we have to get up and get ready for helps a ton too. So, like you said, like potentially a job or a class or something where it's not just like, it would be nice if you did this today, but like, hey, at 12, you're doing this.
And then the thing where it says, "Hi Gretchen," sorry, where it says, "How do we best encourage our recent?" The word "encourage" sounds so nice,
Mm-hmm.
but my caution, and this is not judgment. This is after working with thousands of families, is the rescuing, the enabling, the encouraging. What does encouraging mean? Is it really having these discussions, just trying so hard to get them to see the light and use logic and reason? And it's so, and that what tends to work, but it's not fast. But it does work better is the you got this. You can figure this out. Let me know if I can be helpful. I'm going to go on with my day and do my self care. You want to hang out later? Can I help you with anything? Okay, cool. You got this. And you're like, but then Seth, my kid's just going to game all day long and blah, blah, blah. Okay, so let that happen for a few days. And I do not know this person, by the way. So for Wendy out there and everybody, what I'm saying right now, as far as coaching, is not coaching for Wendy. I would have to know her situation. So I'm not, even though I'm sounding like a blanket statement, this is not advice I would give everybody. But if I'm reading it right, I'd probably be taking the conversation more to, okay, you've got this. And then maybe that they don't right now, but they'll figure it out. But they need space. Imagine it's a pressure cooker and you're trying so hard to encourage, but is it helping? Is it at you? You have to be so honest with yourself. Is it actually helping? And then to be like, okay, yep, can I do anything? And they're just going to game for a week and you're like, I can't watch them do that. Well, maybe watch them. Just keep saying the same things. Kind of blah, blah, blah. Baby steps is what works. And you can also, there is a time sometimes for big action. Like Sarah was saying, you can be like, you're getting out of the house today, or I'm sorry, like your phone is $150 a month and I'm done paying for it now. And there is a time for that. And it depends on the relationship with your kid and your kid. But for some situations, if I knew you well, I would be like, okay, well, is that a good option? Like, should we just be like, why are you still paying for the phone? You want them to be moving on with life. They're gaming. I'm just using the example of they're gaming all day long, and they have a phone that they love and they depend on, and you're still paying for it, but they won't get it. Like, that's something that you can do. And you can say, you want a phone? You can have a phone. You can use it all you want, but you need to figure out how to pay for it. But you're so mean, blah blah blah. Yeah, you're gonna have stuff like that. Um, if you watch Mike's talk this year, it's really addresses that stuff beautifully. But yeah, these are anyhow. Hi, Gretchen Wegner. So Sarah, apparently, do you know Sarah?
No, I don't think
Well, she follows you.
I do.
Oh, wow. See, I'm sometimes more famous than I think. But I have this year, I have LinkedIn requested connections with all the speakers for the first time. So I don't know if you saw
I haven't
mine.
checked my LinkedIn.
I know.
That's a good idea.
Write it down, Seth. It matters. Write it down.
Well, in fact, I was
I don't.
thinking there could be a LinkedIn group for speakers to like connect with each other.
That's a thing.
More and more people are getting on LinkedIn. I am discovering in our world, it's kind of a fun thing.
Have you heard of MySpace? It's so cool. It's all the cool kids have
I
MySpace.
know.
I don't want to know about anything new, please. Although this is streaming live to LinkedIn, I'm never in LinkedIn, but we figured out how to do it.
I will see you there, Gretchen.
Okay, sounds good. I'm
So
crawling.
Gretchen and Sarah, I'm gonna shut up because you two should talk. So we have parents watching and talking about executive function, study skills, learning, school education, how to support kids, and maybe it'd be fun if you two. I've been going for an hour and 10
Oh, you
minutes.
have.
Yeah, I had.
Okay.
Yeah, Sarah more than Sarah Kesty than Gretchen. So
Well,
I'm
here, I
going
have a thought then, Sarah, because I'd be so curious to hear your thoughts about. There were a couple of questions put in the Facebook group for me based on my presentation. And so I thought maybe I could say what those questions were and then we can chat about them a little bit. What do you think?
Yeah, let's do it. And I can hang for like 15 more minutes and
Yeah.
have to go to a darn x-ray.
A darn X-ray.
Darn X-ray. All right.
So Tiffany said in the Facebook group, how do you help a perfectionist? And then she mentioned 7-year-old. So that feels key to me. A perfectionist 7-year-old kiddo, how do you help them not worry about an incorrect answer here and there? Just on online learning classes. He also has autism. So this was in response to my talk on testing anxiety. But do you have any thoughts about perfectionism, Sarah?
Yes, and man, is it tricky because I think it's helpful to first kind of zoom out and see where that comes from. And sometimes that's like an internal intolerance for like anything uncomfortable. And so like if I'm not perfect, that's uncomfortable. And so I might need to work on some window of tolerance kind of things of like normalizing it, allowing a kid to feel like, ooh, I made a mistake. What does that feel like in my body? Okay, how safe am I after that process is kind of that. And it could be mostly coming from there. It could be a combo, or it could be coming from like the pressure cooker of school, because even though we celebrate growth mindset, we penalize mistakes. Like learning is messy, and then we celebrate the kids who get it right the first time. But like, what if your kid was intelligent, but just need a bit extra? So I think kind of examining where it comes from will sort of tune and kind of guide your approach. But what do you think?
Yeah, well, and the layer of age and the layer of autism and the layer of online classes as a 7-year-old autistic, all of that feels like there are layers of complexity there. What I usually answer to questions around perfectionism when students are older is the first thing is to just look at, I mean, it's always us parents and teachers needing to look at ourselves, right? So look at how do we actually hold mistakes in our own lives and how do we respond to them? And do we celebrate? Oh, yay, I just made a mistake. Here's what that feels like. I feel kind of yucky in my body right now. So I'm going to let myself just feel the yuckiness for a little bit and see if I can feel a little bit better. And then a little bit later, we'll look at how we can reframe the mistake. And, you know, how good are you, the adults in the space, at doing that? I also like to teach students about their brain and about how actually by making a mistake, we're actually creating a wider neural pathway for that skill we're trying to learn if we make the mistake and then notice the mistake. And instead of freaking out about it, if we can actually figure out why was that a mistake and how can we turn that around. So I notice on Duolingo right now, I'm learning Spanish, that there's a lot of mistake making. And actually, I really do. I am learning my words better if I try and mess it up and make a mistake and then fix it later because they make me fix it. A lot of that is easier to talk about with an older student than a 7-year-old. So I don't know that I have more to say in this quick format about a younger kiddo, but I would be curious if I was talking to, is it Tiffany? I said, I would really ask, what are all the other ways that you all hold mistakes in your household, and how can you even reframe your conversations about them?
Or are there spaces that your kid is totally okay making mistakes, like
Yes, good.
sports or taking care
Mhm.
of pets or something where it's
Mhm.
like, whoops, and it's almost kind of funny or
Mhm.
joyful? And then how can we kind of celebrate, like, what went right there?
Right.
And would that be like, is it possible that that kind of talk or like that way of speaking to yourself is available to you in the online school format too?
Mhm.
And it could just be like one class to start with, and then we kind
Mhm.
of spread it out.
Yeah. There's also something about it being an online class, and so I imagine there's just a lot less safety, and so there might be some opportunities to talk about how can we create, like how could the body feel safer inside
Hmm.
a virtual learning space. I will say I'm excited. I don't know this tool yet, but I'm hosting my own summit in October about how to recover after academic disappointment, because October is when SHIT hits the
Right.
fan, right?
That's when the
That's
dip
our
happens.
whoop.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. And one of the speakers is going to be sharing a tool about perfectionism that has to do with some color coding, and I don't even understand it yet because I haven't interviewed them yet to make our recording, but I'll have
Ooh.
another tool coming up soon. Okay, I think there was one other question. Let's see if I can
I have them here. I have
find it
yours
quickly.
here.
Oh, do you?
How do you persuade a resistant teen to change their? Oh, and Sarah, you gotta go.
No, I can hang for 5. We're good.
How do you persuade a resistant teen to change their study style, memorizing facts and such, like anatomy and history, etc.?
Mm-hmm. And I'm assuming this is a parent. And so, first of all, I would just underscore what you said earlier, Seth, which I really appreciated about any time we're encouraging. Like, if they really feel that you need them to change in any way, they're going to be, the resistance is partially coming from that place. So, again, it's a look inward. But I find with students who are resistant to trying it in other ways is that it's like it seems too overwhelming to do it differently. They just
Mm-hmm.
can't imagine that. And so much of my own work as an academic coach is practicing the teeny tiny increments with students. Like, you don't have to do it. You don't have to commit to doing it differently. And would you be willing to
Baby
try?
steps are everything.
Would you be willing to try just this weird? I have this weird idea to help you memorize the next things in anatomy. Could we just try it for 5 minutes? And then if you hate it, I'll be quiet, but let's just try. That's harder for parents to do than it is for a coach or a tutor to do, but that's usually what I'll do. As well as sharing the science behind why we need lots of different strategies in order to learn. It's why I call my approach the anti-boring approach, because if you only have 1 or 2 or 3 strategies that you use all the time, you just can't help but bore your brain. And so let's fill your toolbox with other things.
Yeah.
But Sarah, in your last few minutes, do you have a do you have an
No
additional thought about the
pressure.
resistant teen?
Yeah, I think I kind of take it from like almost like the game approach, or I mean, I'm not a gamer, but like hey, do you want to hack this? Do you want to make this like way easier?
Mhm.
Because check this out. Like, people far smarter than I have figured out that we can kind of match the test
Mhm.
format with how you study, and you get better grades. And so
Mhm.
it's kind of like almost selling it,
Mhm.
but the proofs and the performance because they work. And so and this is probably in the coach teacher realm, you could test it out as a parent depending on, you know, where you are with your relationship. But sometimes when I know I want to suggest something, but I'm getting a little bit of like the signs of resistance, like a lean back or like tears, or that they come in hot about something, and so I've got to help but not like go straight through the front, kind of like a side door. That's when I say, you know what, I was just talking to this person, or I just saw, you can as a parent say, I just saw a YouTube where this person shared the strategy that they figured out that, and just that one step removal, even if it's coming from you, can be that open side door that helps then lower the resistance of like, are you telling me what to do again? And instead be like, okay, you're offering this idea from somebody else. Now, if you do claim you saw it on YouTube, you might have to like represent and show them. Don't totally lie, but probably there is a strategy. And if not, email me, we'll figure it out.
Well, and I love that you said that too. I'm living in my own summit world right now, and my vision for this summit is all of the videos will be 15 minutes or less, preferably 10, and will be 2 students. Even though the summit is for academic coaches and tutors, it'll be 2 students, because what I would love is for people to be inspired to purchase the all access pass. And then you don't have to go to YouTube to look it up. Then you have this database of strategies that you can show students when you're hoping to bump them into some inspiration to try something new.
That's a good point. Yeah, there's not a whole bunch that's direct to students. And like, I think Seth, we showed in my intro video, Gretchen, we're going to have to talk because we could support each other. I just started my Life After High School program, which is the same thing. It's like direct to kids, one stop, and then they have coaching too. So it's so super helpful, because I think, there's a lot around like, how do we as parents and teachers and stuff, but I think kids are ready for the direct resources too. So
yeah, I think so.
awesome.
Yeah, well, you have an X-ray, my dear.
Right. A darn X-ray too. It was lovely to meet you.
Likewise.
And my friend Seth, I'll talk to you next week. Well, I'll keep communicating because I love TIFOS, and this has been an amazing weekend so far. But
Oh yeah, for those watching, we have a summit, executivefunctionsummit.com, going on right now. So join us. Thanks, Sarah. Well, what's up, Gretchen?
Hey, I was at I don't know what to call it other than like a dance/play class this morning. So I rushed home from that a little early to be able to dive on with you all.
Aw.
Nice to get my play on.
Do you want to hear the other questions?
Are there more? I thought I only saw 2, but yeah, tell me if there's
Somebody
more.
said, thank you for your talk. It was so insightful and practical.
Great.
When I watched the flashcard talk with Karen Tui Boys, I immediately thought that it was a great way to practice retrieval and encode in a new way, all in the same tool. I love your study cycle. So there's Karen's and there's Gretchen's different approaches and thoughts and ways. I don't know if that's a question.
Well, it's not a question, but I can name that I think flashcards get a bad rap and
Reputation, but some people say rap.
And I haven't watched Karen's presentation yet, but she is going to be presenting the student-friendly version of that for my summit, and I'm really excited to learn it through that. And I think there are lots more fun ways to use flashcards than we do, and students use them to bore their brains, usually. It's just like, oh, I've got this huge pile, or it's even boring making them. And then you just kind of tune out as you go through flashcard after flashcard. So I am all for anything that makes them more exciting. And because I haven't seen Karen's yet, I don't actually know the accuracy of like, is it really an encode in a new way strategy, or is it like just like pure interesting retrieval practice? So I'm looking forward to that. And if people don't know what I mean by retrieval practice versus encode in a new way, I teach this thing called the study cycle, which is a 3-step process that takes all of the science of learning and squishes it into 3 steps. And the 3 steps are, first we encode, like we see something, some information for the first time. Then we test ourselves to see what we know and we don't know. And then third is the stuff we don't know, we try and learn it or encode it in a new way. So I guess with that definition, it's definitely, if you're doing a creative flashcard technique, it's definitely encoding a new way.
Yeah, um, I would say the same. Like, first of all, the word fun that you mentioned, that is like, why can't we can? It just takes some creativity to figure out how to make it fun. But flashcards, I talk about that flashcards, and my brain is so fried because I've been looking at this stupid light for an hour, looking at a screen 22 inches in front of me for an hour and 19 minutes. But what's the flashcard program that everybody uses?
Quizlet.
Quizlet. I hate Quizlet
Hmm.
generally. But the reason is because it feels like you're doing something, but you're not. And I like to say, like, imagine you wanted big biceps and you were gonna like use something like this and try to get big biceps. It's a waste of time. It seems like you're doing something, and it's doing something, but
Right.
it's just such a it, it's it's rote, ROTE, if we're talking rep and rap, and it's unengaging, it's meaningless, but you could take flashcards and have a concept or an idea or whatever on one side, and details on the other side, or however you want to use them creatively. And I teach kids to draw their notes. I want to see, and I talk about memory champions, people who memorize randomized decks of cards. The best memory champions in the world can memorize 10 decks of cards, which is 520 random decks, 52 cards in a deck, 520 randomized. And one of the things that they do is they visualize themselves going through a house or a building, and that here is a image on the wall of the Queen of Hearts, and they see, so they go through like a story in their mind. But either way, drawing and thinking through when we're making these connections and we're mixing auditory, visual, and kinesthetic ways of learning, and experiential ways of processing, like, one of the things I used to do when I was a kid is I would cheat on tests, and and I had this old Casio watch, and I would use the clicky pencil and write so small, right? And I would stick it under my watch. And I never once looked at the cheat sheet. Do you know why?
Because you learned it by making it.
Yeah. Now, I don't know that has to do. I don't know. But it's like sometimes it depends what you're learning, but sometimes it doesn't take much. But flashcards may or may not be like it, but if we're drawing concepts and the mind has to go into a place where we're creating symbols to represent something, and we're relating it to other weird things in our life, that we're making connections to things, then that makes learning a lot easier if we're connecting it to something already.
Yes. Well, and that word easier is a little tricky because yes, we do learn it more efficiently and effectively, but it doesn't necessarily feel easy, but that's the point because all of the brain science points
Effortful.
to the more effort, the better, right? And so it's the bummer. It's just the bummer of
But it's
teaching
not.
people.
Once
it's
we get over there, I think so much of studying is one's relationship to studying. So they can say, I hate I could say, I hate studying. No, I don't hate studying.
Right.
When it comes to guitar stuff, I love it. So wait, what's going on? I hate my perception of the context of the studying that I'm doing with this thing.
Right.
So what you said, how can we make it anti-boring? How can we make it fun, interesting, and engaging? There are a million ways. So but if we have a relationship in our mind with this thing that, oh,
Right.
it's so awful. Once we start getting over that, and we're like, oh, I have a toolkit to do this kind of thing,
Right.
and I know a bunch of ways, and then it's like that relationship can change where it's not this like this horrific thing, this boring studying. It's like,
Right.
no, I'm actually learning cool stuff, and I feel like I'm being challenged, and the effortfulness is actually challenging and fun. And
Yeah. Yeah, or I can tell I'm not learning, but even that's kind of interesting. Rather than being a bummer, it's just like, oh, I'm not learning. Like that didn't stick. Do I want it to stick? Maybe I don't care. If I don't care, that's one thing. Cool, then I don't care. But what do I want to stick? And how do I keep on hacking the system in ways that I care about? So like
That's what I was
um,
gonna say with the failure with Duolingo. Yeah.
yeah, one thing I've decided with Duolingo is I'm not actually putting any effort into it. Even though I know effort means you learn faster and more efficiently. I have decided, I mean, it's Duolingo. I don't have to learn Spanish super quickly. I went to Mexico this summer, so I'm more motivated, but I've just decided I do Duolingo during my morning poop. And that's just when I do it. And I do it, so that's,
That's going viral.
yeah, 3 to 5 minutes a day. But I can feel myself learning. And I feel myself, there's a moment where I'm like, oh, that's a new word. Do I want to write it down? I mean, I can't exactly because I'm indisposed in the bathroom, but I'm like, I am good with it taking a lot of time.
You've made a decision consciously,
Hmm.
and you have a toolbox to be able to say,
Hmm.
okay, this is how I'm going to approach it with this,
Hmm.
and I'll do these experiments and this. And I think one of the problems with school though is that it's like the external world is telling you these are the things you need to learn, and you need
Right.
to learn them
That's the
from these
problem.
people in this way. You need to show you're learning in this type of an
Mhm.
assessment, and and great teachers obviously differentiate. They bring it alive. They fall in love with the material. They convey that love for the material to the kids, and it doesn't matter what age. Great teachers are able to really teachers are such gifted human beings, and to be able to make something come alive, you know, is so valuable. But so much of the system is so
Mhm.
worksheet and the questions at the
Yeah.
end of the
Yeah.
chapter, and do this digital thing,
Yeah. There's a
and
lot we could really complain about, and a lot that when students complain, I'm like, I get it. You're right. So, and this is where you are. This is the system you're in. And I can't tell you how many students, Seth, I have offered back. I'm not seeing students now because I train educators now, but back when I was seeing students, I would offer, I'll work with your parents to see if they'd be willing to let me show you some alternatives to high school if you like. Like, you don't have to be here. You don't have to be in this system. There are some different things we could work towards you choosing if you want. And then that would twist the conversation a little bit because then they'd be like, well, but would I have prom or would I have sports or would I have my friends? I'd be like, well, maybe not, but you would have X, Y, and Z. And then like, no, I'll just stay here. And it's like, okay, then notice this is a choice of yours that you're going to stay here, which means more worksheets and more Quizlet and more all these things that feel boring. But even a worksheet can be, if not fun, if not exciting, at least kind of interesting if you understand how learning works in the brain, and if you approach that worksheet from a place of choice. How do I want to do the worksheet right now? Am I going to use it as a retrieval practice, which means I'm open to getting it all wrong if I don't remember anything, but I'm just going to try and see? Or do I want to spend 15 minutes looking through the textbook first about each of the questions and then closing the textbook and seeing if I remember? Like, what do I want to do? And just that little, like, oh, I'm at choice here. Oh, wait, I get to choose how I learn this. Worksheets may not be the best way, but it's the way I have. So how can I transform it for myself? That is possible.
yeah, yeah. And then I'm going to go back to even on worksheets, like, and some teachers won't like this and some don't care, but like drawing on it,
Hmm.
that's okay.
It is. Draw a little symbol if you have to fill in a blank and write the word. Draw a little symbol next to it if you want. Or you there. Anyway, so many ways.
You want to know my favorite? It's bringing me back. I don't know why I'm thinking about high school today, but you want to know my favorite like worksheet strategy when I was in high school?
Tell me.
Go to class and look at my friend and be like, "Can I copy that real quick?" I do not teach that to my students. I might, but
I love this window into Seth in school. And Seth, just FYI, you need to think about if you're going to speak at my summit and what your favorite single study strategy is to teach students now, because I would love to have you teach that. So you
my
can think about.
favorite I guess it depends what you're studying though.
I know it does, but we just need one thing that students don't naturally think to do. that's out of the box and it's a particular answer to a particular study challenge. So,
Okay.
I mean, it might have something more to do with drawing or anyway, you decide later and we'll talk when TFOS is done, but I can't wait to hear what you come up with.
Okay. I think I know what it'll be.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
I did almost fail out of high school. I think I
Mm,
graduated with like a 1.6 GPA or something.
mm,
And I did, in fact, graduate, whatever that means. And then I went to college on probation in a summer program. So I had no summer break after high school. And I went to Ball State University for a summer program and had to take these like remedial courses to prove that I could get in the fall. And of course, when I'm in trouble like that, I make things look good, like I was doing good. So I passed those classes. I got an A in study skills and two C's in the summer classes. True
Oh,
story.
congratulations.
Got into Ball State, failed fall semester, failed spring semester, so I was officially kicked out from Ball State.
Hmm.
Went straight into a community college the next year in Columbus, Ohio, so that I could, because I didn't want to live with my parents, and I thought, oh, they're so annoying and all that, and I just wanted lived with my grandma because she didn't bother me. I could do what I wanted, and then I failed they did it on quarters, the fall quarter. Then I failed winter quarter, and then I just dropped out.
Mm.
And then I took a gap year or two or three or whatever, and then I found my passion,
Yeah.
and and uh, and learned that I wasn't, a hopeless, worthless, lazy failure.
Mm. Yeah. Well, and you found
I
your
don't know
passion.
where y'all. I've been talking. I've been
Yeah.
on here for an hour and 30 minutes with that stupid light in my face, and so if I'm
Well, we
getting
could end
loopy now,
any time too. Do you have to stay on or can we find our ending together and do
let's
your best?
find our ending. The demise of Gretchen and Seth.
Yes. Wait, I have a quick question though. What were you teaching when you were a teacher? I have forgotten what subject you were teaching.
Subjects: math, science, social studies,
Oh,
reading,
okay.
writing, like
Oh, wow.
speaking, everything.
Like everything. Okay.
And I taught different grades. My first teaching job ever was
Mm-hmm.
preschool special education.
Wow.
Then I taught fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, and third, and mostly it was 5, 6. Um, and then I did gifted and talented specifically for 7 or 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really cool working with 5, 6, 7, 8 with gifted and talented kids because you
Wow.
have and then the 2E kids who are so asynchronous. You have these kids that are just all over the board, and I love the challenge of differentiating for all, and that's why I like project-based learning, and
Mm-hmm.
I love rubrics that give a lot of flexibility where kids self-grade and blah blah,
Mm-hmm.
where they have choice in
Mm-hmm.
what they're learning. So I really like making things where everybody feels like they're successful because we can do that.
Mm-hmm.
We can construct education that way.
Right.
Um, but yeah, so 5, 6, 7, 8, math, science, social studies, reading, writing. Writing is my favorite subject to teach.
Hmm.
Number one, I love teaching writing
Hmm.
because I think that the ability, and I think it's so sad. Well, this is not in all countries, but in America, like the lack of respect and honor for teachers
Yeah.
and giving them what they need to really shine and really support the kids
Mm-hmm.
um, and then that kids walk out of school saying, I hate reading and I hate writing is one of the most, it's just one of the worst things I could imagine. Like a kid to walk out of school saying, I hate writing.
Mm-hmm.
Writing is the key. And I don't care if you're a writer or not, but, and but to be, and I don't care if you have learning disabilities, being able to write at any level and being able to like it and enjoy it and see the value in it, it is communication,
Express
it is
yourself.
expression.
Mm-hmm.
And our kids, you, we have something to say in this lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
And you may not write again as you become a young adult, but what it does for the brain in terms of learning to communicate so that you can communicate to yourself and think clearly and make good decisions, but so that you can also know how to communicate to the world about what's important to you. and your message and your gifts and your talents and strengths and things that matter to you and are purposeful to you. Those skills of thinking to me are so magical. And to see kids fall in love with writing, even if they think they hate it, I love the challenge of that. And to see them have a relationship with it that says, oh, this is cool, this is fun, this is interesting, this is weird, this is crazy. There's so many things I see the value in it. Like, I just think that that's one of the biggest gifts you can give kids.
Do you do when you were doing more one-to-one coaching, would you also do writing support with students?
Yeah, you know what's funny is one of my most popular YouTube videos was like some writing process videos and stuff. They're super popular. But yeah, so with coaching, I'll sometimes do writing stuff. Lately, I haven't been doing a lot of one-to-one, and I don't have an office right now. But when I have my office, yeah, I would have the way I structured time with the kids, I would have time to really dive into writing projects.
Yeah. I loved it too. That was what I was like. I could consider myself a writing tutor as well as an academic coach.
Oh
I
God,
love it.
it's
So
so
that's neat
cool
to share with you that.
when they start to fall in love with it.
Hmm.
But I think that as a teacher, if there be fault, let it be mine. If I heard, I don't know if you get annoyed by stuff like this, but I heard somebody at my gym the other day saying they were setting up for a class for kids, and they're like, "Oh, the kids never do this right." And in my mind, I'm just like, "Do I open my big mouth or not?" And I did not. But it's like, if there's fault, let it be mine. If the kids don't do it right, it's your fault. So
You didn't figure out yet how to
teachers,
attune with
there's
them and
no
set it up.
problem with that. It's just like, take 100% responsibility. That's what I did as a teacher. That's what I said. If the kids are bored, it's not the kids are bored. It's I'm boring. I'm not bringing the. I had to follow. I was not a history buff, and then I was teaching history, and I had to fall in love because you can't fake it. I had to fall in love with history to be able to teach history. So I did worked my ass off to fall in love with history to serve those kids. And then the science and the math and the reading and writing was easier for me, but but the history was hard. But it is my responsibility to make it come alive. And it is work. And I know teachers are worked so hard anyway, but
Yeah. And there is the institutional constrictions
there are
too. So
there
that
are.
must be
Oh my
named
gosh.
sometimes when you intend the best and work
And the
super hard.
pressures
Yeah.
from the system in the
Yeah.
school, especially for new teachers who don't have good mentorship.
Hmm.
My first mentor, I forget if we had to meet every week or how that went, but and I didn't know, I'm a brand new teacher. I don't know what's going on. And she's like, "Oh yeah, we just have to sit here for an hour or whatever and pretend like we're doing something." Okay.
What a sad thing. Mentorship
It
is
is
gorgeous,
sad.
gorgeous
It is
opportunity.
sad. Thank God I had like other amazing. So there's one named Ellen Riefel. I think
Mhm.
she might even still be teaching, who like just was one of the most inspiring teachers ever. Candy Hammond was one of the most like there's so many inspiring teachers that I've just they're
Mhm.
everywhere. And if you open your eyes in a school, you can see people just doing incredible things, creative. Like, you can walk by a classroom and you can look at the energy in the classroom in a second and you can be like, that teacher's on fire. Those
Mhm.
kids are bored to death. They're they're pulling their hair out waiting for the bell to ring.
Mhm.
Those kids are walking out of there like they feel good about themselves. They're smiling. They're saying goodbye to the teacher. Bye.
Mhm.
They're excited to see the teacher. You can feel it. And then if you watch those teachers, some of them are not. It's not like things that they're not textbook things, but you have to really watch them. And then you can be like, oh, that's what their magic is. That's how they create magic, and you can learn from these people. So, if anybody wants to know, I'm a stealer. I steal all my ideas from
We all
brilliant
are.
people.
I think that's what we do. Like people have said about my anti-boring toolkit that it's like there's nothing really new in there, but which is kind of true, but it's like, but the way you've organized and packaged it, Gretchen, is so unique and allows me to add tools to the toolkit and blah, blah, blah.
Makes it
But
accessible.
yeah, but there's not, I mean, there's probably some new tweaks just because my quirky brain does interesting things with some ideas.
Oh, there are two new messages. Love the chat. That's what I want for my son. Thanks, Seth and Gretchen. A kind relationship with writing. Yeah.
Hmm. Nice. Yes,
All
and
right.
I will say that I have a student who I worked with years and years ago. He's 25 now. He's still working on finishing college, which is great to do as a 25-year-old instead of as whatever. And he still has a rocky relationship with writing. So sometimes it just doesn't kick in for a very long time. But he's also the most beautiful writer I've ever seen when he does write. So,
I have a student that I'm going to brag about, and she just wrote a book.
mm.
Okay, so I just pulled up her site, but I don't know if I should. I guess it's not.
Anonymity around who your clients were.
She was. I was her teacher in 5th and 6th grade, and
Oh,
she's like 25
yeah,
now. But she
yeah.
just wrote a book. She has. She produces music. She has a YouTube channel. She.
Mm.
Um.
Well, and you had pulled some
You
writing
know.
out of her, I
I
imagine.
hope so. I hope so.
Yeah. Oh, that's sweet.
I taught her for 2 years, and
Yeah.
yeah, I love updates from my students, and
Mm,
it's just the coolest thing to see, just to see where their life takes them.
mm.
I have a student now who builds acoustic guitars, so I used to play guitar in the classroom and make up songs for the kids, and I don't know if I had any impact or not, but it's just so cool to
Yeah.
see. I like to think I did, and um,
Mm.
but yeah, it's so cool to see kids like create cool lives. So, all right,
Let's let you
Gretchen
go take a
Wegner.
break.
Yeah, I think I'm going to. I need to
Mm. Yeah, it seems
go
like you
take a
need to.
walk, get some
Yeah,
sunshine.
get out. I'm gonna go make some lunch, is what I'm gonna do.
Thank you all for being here. My name is Seth Perler. This is Gretchen Wegner. We're with ExecutiveFunctionSummit.com, ExecutiveFunctionSummit.com, going on this weekend right now, free. If you like it, please share the URL. That's the best way people find out about us. So if this helped you, help us out and share that link somewhere. That would mean a lot. And I'll shamelessly ask because that's how people find us. So, all right, Gretch,
Okay, take care. Have a good walk.
good to see you.
Bye. Good to see you.